Bob, this is Connor Letourneau, San Francisco Chronicle. I was just wondering, in a draft like this, how do you balance, drafting for need versus drafting best player available?
Yeah, I think, that's been asked that question a few times, and I think the answer you don't want to hear, which is the truth, is that hopefully you can do both. I don't know where we're going to pick yet, but you don't pick 1 through 5 that often, or I guess you'd like not to. So the goal would be to get somebody that can help you now and help you later. And if the player's really good and you get it right, I don't know that that's too much to ask. I mean, not everybody, even some of our really good players, although they don't help you right away, they still help you. Some of the guys we've had on our team for a while. So it's the goal, and you try to meet it. I don't think you want to necessarily think too short term and sacrifice a big upside if you think a guy has a lower ceiling but can help you for the next 2 years, but not as much after that. So you kind of want to avoid that. But the goal would be to kind of check both those boxes.
Hey, Bob, this is Wes Goldberg with the Mercury News. You guys have been used to obviously picking at the end of the first round. Now that you're, going to be picking in the top 5 here, wherever it lands, does your approach change at all throughout the scouting process? Do you feel maybe more pressure to deal with this pick, or looking different from, somebody that you'd be using this sort of resource on as opposed to a late first rounder?
Yeah, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but you certainly have more of a narrow focus. You have less of a pool of guys to look at than you would at 25 or 30 in the draft. You'd like to have more visibility. In a normal year, you would probably. You'd get more access to a guy. You might have him come in once or twice and have an ability to be around them more, maybe, because a lot of players as well as agents are motivated to be drafted high, so they work with you. But when you're picking where we were, you're a little bit at the mercy of the process. But this year's a completely different situation too. So I'd like to say that you drill down a little deeper, and we will. But I still have to see what that process will look like. And look, there'll be. I think hindsight is more poignant on things like this, and you will either be celebrated or criticized more than you would, because there's more of a focus on players that are drafted this high. So I guess you deal with that. But that's, you can't make any decisions based on that component of things. But it's a completely different situation than we've been in since, the Harrison draft was the highest one I've been involved with. And so we'll see. For me and our staff, I think it'll be nice to get some clarity on just what number do we have, and kind of go from there.
Bob, it's Monty Poole. You've had 8 drafts now, going on 9, and I'm curious to know, what have you learned, I guess, and just how is your approach different now than it was in your first draft or 2 regarding players?
Yeah, Monty, probably more analytical. It doesn't mean you respond to the analytics, but they're introduced into the process a lot more than they were previously in the last 7-8 years. So that factors into things, and it gets very mathematical, and you have to decide how much you want to weight that as part of the process. So that's a different thing. As far as, look, my very, very first draft as a GM was a little bit. There was a lot going on in that one, because we had 4 picks, and that was the Harris and Festus and Draymond and Kuzmic draft. I guess I feel personally like I don't feel overwhelmed. That one was a little overwhelming, because just to have that many picks in the very first time sitting in the chair. So don't feel that weight, but more excited about this opportunity than anything. But as far as how we do things, I think you try to learn from mistakes you make and go back and look at the rankings. And having had the same group together for a little while allows us to go back and say, well, why did you rank this guy in this number, and look at people's patterns and who's been successful and who hasn't within the group, and how they value guys. So there's a little more accountability, but that's also evolving. But I would say the analytics has really grown, not just in our organization, but across the NBA. We're not baseball, but we're much closer to baseball than we ever were, especially 9 years ago.
Bob, it's Nick Friedel. On a broader note, obviously everything's changed, and the draft is no different. But how much more difficult is it for you guys to prepare for this draft compared to drafts in the past?
We'll see. And so far, it's been a long runway, much longer than we've ever. I could say easier because we have more time, but harder because we have less access. But everybody does. I mean, all you can ask for is an even playing field. So I don't know. We'll see how the process unfolds, whether we'll get to view guys virtually or how that'll come together, whether interviews will just be on Zoom or what'll happen in that capacity. But I guess I would ask me at the end of it, or you could even ask me the day before or a week before, and I could tell you actually how it unfolded, what were the difficult parts of it compared to past years. But right now, it's just hard to say what it will be and what it will look like. Clearly, I don't know that there'll be a combine. We're used to even having that. So all you can say is it's everybody's getting the same information, but it is very different. And anytime something's different, you have to adapt to it.
Hey, Bob, it's Ethan. Given those constraints you're talking about, do you think it's at all possible that you might draft somebody where you haven't seen a game in person and haven't seen a workout? Is such a thing even within the realm of possibility for you?
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Which makes you a little uncomfortable, to be honest. It's a rare thing to not have, even if you'd missed a game, you would at least get to see that player most likely in your own facility. But to have the opportunity to maybe not have seen a game, and some of these games you were hoping to see, our whole group was hoping to see when the season, college season, got cut short. And so it may not be me, Ethan, it may be somebody else in the group saw him. I think we've got everybody covered in that capacity where at least somebody's seen. I would have liked to have seen some guys more than I did. But as far as if you're talking about me, that's a possibility. If you're talking about our group, I think between us all, somebody will have seen the person at least play. Now, whether we get to see him in our facility or not, or in another place, that's to be determined. But as far as seeing a game, I think somebody or more than one will be able to raise their hand and say, I saw him, or I saw him a few times.
Is there anybody who could fall in the lottery that nobody from the Warriors has been able to see just because everything ended so quick?
No, I don't think so. Looking at if you're speculating on the lottery and all the guys that are being discussed there, I can't think of a guy that nobody has seen, including the international guys. I think we've seen those guys as people in the group have seen them. So I don't think I have to get back to make sure, but right now off the top of my head, I think of all the top 15, 20 guys, somebody's seen them.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Bob. This is Janie. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you. I'm doing as well as you can.
Yeah, thanks for doing this call. Bob, the last time we talked to you, you weren't sure exactly what Klay was doing at that time. That's been I think a couple months now, and I guess you saw how important the depth was at guard last season, and just where's Klay, and how important is it to have so many guards as we saw you needed?
Yeah, Janie, pivoting a little bit to our current team, we're still awaiting word on what we'll be able to do as a team. As one of the 8 teams that didn't go to Orlando, what can we do? And that would be the opportunity to see Klay. In more than just a 1-on-0 deal, which is what we're allowed to do now. So we're waiting to see. Maybe we have some clarity at some point where we could practice. And the hope would be, again, you have to see it first, and you got to get clearance from our people that he would be able to play, and that we would be able to play as a team. So hopefully check back in at some point here in the near future, and I could answer that better. But right now, just because guys haven't been allowed to play in our facility, I can't really answer what he is. But all indications seem positive, and I'm hopeful that everything will be fine. I have no reason to think they won't. I just can't verify it.
Is it frustrating to not know yet when you can get together as a team, or you just kind of have to play this out and wait until things are done?
As you know, as a human being, we all have to there's a lot of people frustrated about a lot of different things, and there's a lot of unknowns. So you just have to abide by what is safest. And right now, that's not we don't have the opportunity. Hopefully, at some point, we can deem it safe enough to do. But yeah, I mean, there's different levels of frustration. But I think at this point, we just have to follow the guidelines and comply, and hope that at some point we'll get to do some of that stuff.
Thanks, Bob.
Hi, Bob. This is Wes again. Today's results from the lottery, would that change your willingness to maybe trade out or trade down in the draft? If you guys ended up with the first pick, is that just untouchable, or is that an option no matter where you guys are picking?
Yeah, I don't know. Until there's a lot of variables, right? Well, there's a big variable not knowing our pick, but assuming we know it, then it becomes what's the league's value of it, what's our value of it. And until I don't know the league's value of it, to be honest. Nobody's talking about trades, so I have no idea how the league values the first pick, the fifth pick, the fourth pick. I have a sense of how we would value it, but you have to kind of take all that together in every decision you make, and make the best decision for our team. But to answer that question now, even assuming we had the pick number in hand, it's premature to even know the value of it for us or for another team. So we'll have to wait and see kind of how things go in that direction.
Bob, to follow up on that, how much more involved, if at all, are Steph, Klay, and Draymond, at least in the initial conversations right now, leading up to wherever you guys pick, given what's on the line, whether you keep it or deal it away later?
Those guys are great. I mean, they want to win. We want to win. I don't feel any pressure from any of them to do a certain thing. I mean, I know it's been written that we need to win now and they need to get a proven player, but they've not said that to me. Maybe they would at some point. I have no idea. But I think they know, and if they want to obviously talk about it, they can call me or I'll call them, I suppose, too, and get their thoughts. I've already kind of joked with them and asked them what they like of certain players. Steph's big responsibility right now is to hopefully do his job and get us a high pick here. He's on the dais up there, so we're really counting on him right now, and then after that we'll move forward.
Bob, but John Dickinson, what do you make of the notion of there being more pressure to pick one versus less pressure of picking maybe 4 or 5, depending upon how it shakes out? Obviously, you want the best pick you can, but how do you weigh that in your mind as far as maybe we'll let a couple things play out first, and that makes a decision easier to make?
Sean, I guess it's easier as far as my own blame or credit, I guess, but that's not really, can't really do the job like that. So if you get the number 1 pick wrong, I'm sure people don't forget that. If you get number 5 pick wrong, people are more likely to move on. So there's a scrutiny to 1, but there's also an opportunity of having 1. There's an optionality to it. You control it, so to speak. Whereas 5 or 4 or whatever else, you're at a little bit of the mercy of the teams in front of you. So yeah, I think you always want the most attractive asset. If you value the pick as an asset, I think it is. The number is an asset. But you do, if you want to be honest, I mean, you face more scrutiny because when you quote unquote redraft or you wait a couple of years and people say, well, they should have done this X, Y, or Z, or if you don't get it right at the very, very top, you do open yourself up. But look, I mean, shouldn't do the job if that's a fear of somebody in my position. You got to just do what you think is right. And I think anybody would want that pick. It's almost like in Vegas. You don't want to. The dealer has you don't want to surrender. You want to play. You want to compete. You want to take. Do the best you can with the pick.
Bob, when you pick so high, does the gut become less of a factor, if any factor at all?
No, I think the gut's always a factor. I mean, that's what, hopefully, if you want to talk about any decisions any of us make, the fact that we make them from some place, you can call it gut, you can call it how you make decisions, how I make decisions, how do you value all the information around you, and that, I guess, you could define as gut, but it's really just processing information, kind of funneling it, focusing it, and then doing what you think is right at the time. And all I could do in our group is whatever we have in front of us and the people we've hired who are vitally important, everybody's going to have their say. And all of you on the call know that we're pretty collaborative, but it's a process we enjoy. And it's not groupthink, I'll tell you that. We're not all just patting myself on the back and doing whatever I say. Everybody's got a voice. I like that. I think we like that. But ultimately, Monty, there is a gut component to it. But it's not shoot from the hip gut component. It's more of, hey, listen, we got all this information. We've processed it. We've digested it. We've evaluated it. Now what do you want to do? In that moment, you might say that's gut. But it's not like we don't do any of that. And I just walk in and go, you know what? I like this guy. Forget about all that. That's not how we do it. So there's some gut to it, but it's an informed and kind of educated gut.
Does gut become more or less of a factor as you get experience?
Oh man, it's almost there's such an information flow now that I think people that would walk around and just say gut, you probably don't hear that as much. You may hear it when somebody gets something right and looks back and just wants to use that as an example. But like anything now, there's so much math to everything. There's so much numerical processing to do that the notion of what it used to be maybe 15, 20 years ago, where, I look at that scene in Moneyball where they're all sitting around the table and you've got some of the old scouts commenting on what the guy's girlfriend looks like. And then the new, Billy's sitting there with his assistant Jim, and they're processing on base percentage. It's somewhere in the middle of that, especially in our sport, because we're not baseball. We're never going to be baseball. Baseball is one at bat, one pitcher. The variables are very different. Maybe who's batting behind you or in front of you or who's on base, but in basketball, it's not like that. So I think the gut component more now, Monty, means how does your gut process the mountains of information in front of you? All the stuff you have on players now. You've got IQ tests, you've got measurements, you've got plus length, you've got the analytics. And I talk about analytics, but it's not a simple part of it. It's how do you process the analytics? What kind of analytics are you using? What are your intellectual property formulas that you designed and that you work with? So it's all that stuff. But ultimately, you got to look at all that and say, all right, we're doing this. So maybe less what you're talking about. There's an old school definition of gut. Gut still comes into play, but maybe not like it did in the past.
Hey Bob, this is Wes again. With the playoffs starting today, and you're looking at these top teams in the West, how much does matching up those influence what you guys might do as far as the person you're looking to add?
I don't know. I just left a pretty good Denver Jazz game. They're pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're at that point yet where how we match up. I think we got to maybe it was good luck, but I never felt like we had to design a team to compete with another team. We just tried to make the best version of ourselves. I still think that's the right way to go. But you do see a lot, especially in the West, not some of the teams that aren't here anymore, certainly showed that they're here to stay and have great futures. So it's a daunting thing, the West. I mean, if you look at the next year, I think all 15 teams expect to be in the playoffs and maybe have a case for it. So we got to do the best we can with the vehicles we have to get better, the draft being one of them, and some of the other tools we have. But I don't look at it like we got to sign a guy to stop this guy or that guy. We just got to get better with our own situation.
Will there be any superstitions in play on Thursday?
I don't know. I mean, I delegated this process to my good friend Raymond Ritter and Kirk Lacob, and I kind of conveniently washed my hands of the specifics of the lottery money, but there's a rumor there's going to be a dog in play. Obviously Steph, but guys, I know we're in the business of entertainment, but just tell me where we pick. All right, just tell me what number it is.